125 laps, I believe, is Z-Rock, the radio station, was the sponsor. I think I led maybe 120 laps of it. All I know is that I'm pretty sure I started in the top 3 or 4, and I got into the lead pretty quick. And then there was the fire.
It's a long way to go, but nobody wants to lose sight of the leaders. All the heavy hitters mired down in traffic about halfway up. Bill Rondo on the move. He's working the inside group. Matt Chiata in the 81 car, running into some type of problem. He's on the outside, and that's not the place you want to be. Problems up front, Jimmy Broderick, Vinny Anglaise. Oh, a whole bunch of cars getting balled up here on the front stretch.
I was sitting with my wife, and Danny was only 2 years old then, and he comes spinning around, and it was Lanphere, hit him from behind, and it was kind of nothing. We all sat there for a second. You could see Dennis getting unbuckled.
I think it was Dennis Gada and Mark Lajeunesse and maybe Larry Lanphere.
And I think it was Larry Lanphere's car had the fuel cell broke somehow, and there was fuel everywhere, and of course nobody knew it.
And when I hit Larry, rear bumper to rear bumper, the fuel cell got cut right through the tin, right through the bladder, and it all came gushing out under his car and under my car.
I remember that once it all stopped, I believe it was one of the Gadas fired up his car to drive away, and that's what started the inferno.
When Dennis tried to start his car, it just went off, and it was, you know, how you get that woof, and it was on.
We've got a couple of cars on fire as Larry Lanphere is number 12, and as you can see, evidently the fuel cell in car number 12 has erupted.
I don't know, the great fear that you have when you see it in the fire.
Fire is real scary stuff in those cars. I mean, especially if somebody can't get out.
Fire is, your worst enemy when it comes to racing, and that was real fire.
There's nothing we could do. It was all Cohansey. Get the guy out of the car. Forget the fire. Get the guy out of the car.
Scary, because I never saw really Larry Lanphere get out of the car, and I think I did see Gada get out of the car.
I must have been about 30 feet away, and watching Lajeunesse running through the fire to go pull Dennis out. I thought, pretty heroic on Mark's part.
Mark Lajeunesse we were left front to left front, basically. And he was right there telling me, help me get out of there.
And myself and Dennis Gada, we were stuck there. We got out just in time when it really got big.
I think I was in the press box. Yeah, I was. Time just slows down when those things happen. So it seemed like it took a half an hour for the fire department to get water on that thing.
I was on the flag stand with, I want to say it was Danny.
Yeah, I was on the flag stand.
You were on the flag stand?
I was.
Wow.
And I felt it.
It was probably 50 to 60 feet away from the flag stand. It was really, it was pretty intense.
My first concern was, of course, for the safety of everybody. God, please don't let anybody get killed or burn or whatever else.
I was standing in the pits at that time in turn 1, and I couldn't believe that nobody was harmed.
And I was sitting there in the wreck, and the next thing I remember is the back of my head getting hot. And I'm sitting there, and it's like, I'm hitting the switch, and it's like, come on, start, woman! I drove on it. I can still remember that.
Ladies and gentlemen, kindly step back away from the fence. As you can see, the boys from Cohansey are right there. The fire will be contained on the racetrack.
Well, you say that, every time a car hits the wall on the front stretch, and usually it's nothing, but, this was a real fire. So it really was a big deal, and we really did need, the kids to stay away for once.
I had gotten down off the flag stand, gone into the grandstands. I was trying to get people away, to move away from the fence.
The winds were blowing the flames through the fence and into the grandstand.
And getting back away from the fence area. Ladies and gentlemen, take your time, go easy, but get away from the area of the fire.
the track crew trying to put the fire out, and it just seemed like they were pushing the fire, you know, like it was spreading out.
It was hot. You could probably roast a hot dog from when I was sitting in it, you know. We sat down, like I said, coming down to turn 4, and it happened front stretch right there, right in front of us.
And you literally feel the heat come up and hit you.
It was a huge fire. She started to run up the stands. We still talk about it to this day. She started to run up the stands, and I grabbed the kid out of her hands and ran kind of around the crowd and out of the stands because it was a big fire. It was pretty scary.
This is why, in the case of every fire, we ask you to back off and get out of the way as soon as possible. That's for your own safety and well-being. And as you can see, the boys from Cassidy have things pretty well beaten down.
I honestly don't think I went that night.
Really?
But obviously I heard about it.
Yeah.
So the very next morning, I went up to the Gadas and I was standing next to the car with Dennis just looking at it.
Was your car junk after that?
Car wasn't that bad, really. If I could have driven it away, it probably would have been in much better shape. Having left it there, just, you know, melted a bunch of stuff in the back of it.
The thing I remember is all the roll cage padding had melted down into like curtains.
But it didn't really hurt much in my car. Obviously, I needed a fuel cell, but the rear end was okay. The chassis wasn't bent.
And I remember just looking at it and saying, so what are you going to do? He's like, I'm going to fix it. I was like, really? This thing's crispy.
So we came back the next race.
Came back the next race with the same car?
Yeah.
Larry Lanphere's car was, you know, literally fried. I mean, it was burnt to a crisp.
Yeah, Larry Lanphere totally lost his car.
I took a walk down into the infield at the end of the night to check out Larry's car, and it just kind of looked like a car that had been deep in the woods forever. There was nothing left of that car. It was just completely charred, and it was just an amazing sight.
I think it took everyone by surprise. You know, make sure no one in the stands got hurt, but the fire crew was just in shock what they saw, and I don't think they really knew how to handle something like that at the time. I mean, I'm sure it would be different today.
I think we all learned a little something about being prepared for the big one.
Ever since that fire, Cohansy's got foam now. They never had foam prior to that. Really? Yeah. You know, actually, if you look at the stuff that Cohansy has now, it's really top shelf compared to whatever footage you've seen. I'm sure you could tell the difference now. Because that was scary. That was a big deal.
That could have been really bad for a lot of people, and thankfully it wasn't.
Yeah, that was a nasty crash. That was a really scary. That was probably the worst fire I think I ever saw in a race car.
Yeah, those guys were pretty lucky that night.
As a driver, that's one of those things that I try to forget that I saw because it was that ugly. And I'm just thankful that, you know, we're not talking about a different story as to what happened that day.